Hello! It is time for Writing Wednesday once again. That was really peppy. Sorry. So, I am doing another question that came from a friend of mine, the same friend who submitted the other question, and it kind of goes along with development, I think. I thought about sticking it together, but I'm trying to keep these videos to not being very long so that you're not sitting here watching them for hours on end. I'm trying to keep them less than 10 minutes ideally. The other one was 15. But anyway, this has to do with writing in the voice of the opposite sex. So for me, what caught her attention was the summer I gave up boys. You know, that was solely from a boy's perspective. And she kind of said, how do you prepare to write in the voice of, you know, the opposite sex, and how is that done? And, you know, I wouldn't know how to go about doing that. And the truth is, neither do I. A lot of the time things just happen, and if a particular idea comes to you, then it works out because you have this artistic vision for it. But there are things that I kind of looked at when I was writing more so in the things we can't change and doing Zeke's perspective. That's the only dual point of view story that I have out right now. I have written a lot more romances that I don't intend to publish or anything like that, that are dual point of view. So I did have some experience with it and like some practice essentially, just not with anything that I recently published, but just some stuff that went through my mind when I was preparing to write from Zeke's point of view, and also when I was thinking about Isaiah's. And then for another story, a lot of you may have seen at the end of Isaiah's story that I am planning to do a romance series in Lemon Bay, and Kalia's cousin Simone is in that series, and I am planning to do those actually in third person, and they will be dual point of view from the boy and the girl, more of a traditionally paced romance novel. Excuse me. Sorry, I have no idea where that came from. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Obviously I need a nap. It's my day off and I'm gonna sleep. Anyway, so just some things that I think are important when you are writing in a voice of the opposite sex. The first thing is to read books to kind of prepare yourself. I think of reading books as research for writing. And, you know, when you're in a field, you have to do continuing education for it. And for a writer, the way you do that is to read. Read all the time. Read what's popular, even if you don't particularly like that genre, because you need to know why. Whoa. Excuse me. Super sorry. You need to know why that book was popular, and you know, you need to kind of dissect what they're doing. And a lot of the times it's just a fluke, you know, there is no real reason aside maybe more from their marketing strategy than what they actually wrote. But anyway, read books that are written by men if you need to write a story from a boy's perspective, and you'll notice a different style. The most notable one that I can think of is John Green, because not only did he write, he is a man, obviously, and he wrote books from a boy's perspective, and then he wrote The Fault in Our Stars, which is from a girl's point of view, and he is a man. In my opinion, it's kind of rare. I'm sure if you really looked, you could find a lot of them, but women tend to write, I think, men and women's point of views more often than a guy will write from a girl's perspective. That makes sense? Yes, it did. But that is kind of a rare occasion where he's writing, you know, from a girl's perspective, and not even dual point of view. The whole story is from Hazel's point of view. And yet, if you really read into that and read in past a lot of it, you'll see Hazel kind of has the same sense of humor as a guy. You know, to me, that book was almost more of a comedy than a tragedy, quite honestly. It might be because I listened to it on audio. I did not read it the first time I went through it. And the narrator for that series, I definitely recommend the audiobook. I found it on sale shortly before the movie came out, and it was like $5, so I was like, okay, I'll jump on this train for $5. And it was really good, and the narrator was good, and it was more funny. But anyway, he writes Hazel, and I feel like if you read that, and then if you were to think about how that book might have been if it was written by a woman who was far more emotional and everything like that, you would find yourself reading something more like My Sister's Keeper, and it would be far less comedy and more emotion. And I think that's the biggest difference between writing from a boy and a girl. Yeah, if you're writing a romance, the emotional talk is kind of inevitable, but men and women don't see it the same way. But I don't know if I'm going. Normally I make notes so I can kind of stay on track with these videos, but I had very few notes to talk about this because I really don't think that there's a good way to get into it. If you read books by men that are from, you know, told in a men's perspective, it can kind of give you a good idea, but I think a lot of it comes down to your individual character and their voice, and pinning down their voice. Men talk differently and they react differently in different situations, and I think that if you have, you know, your brothers or your dads or your boyfriends and stuff, you kind of have to look and see how they react to the same situations that you do and how their reaction is different. Just some things that right off the bat that I kind of think are obviously different from men and women, especially when you're writing about them, are attention to detail. When my friend was reading the Isaiah, my editing and writing partner, Allie, was reading Isaiah, she said, one thing that really gets me is that I know he's an artist, but he seems very focused on detail. And guys aren't really focused on the detail. And usually if you're writing a description from a guy's point of view, it's not going to be as detailed as you could get away with a woman's. The only thing I think, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's time for espresso, let me just tell you. That's what's wrong with me. Anyway, aside from when you're maybe describing a girl that they think is beautiful or whatever, you kind of don't have that same attention to detail. Guys aren't focused on little things. And they tend to be a little harsher, you know. They wouldn't say she's really beautiful, they'd say she's hot and I want to do her or something like that. Obviously that depends on your character and, you know, how crass he is, but when you get a group of guys together and they're talking versus a group of girls, it's going to be very different language. It's going to be a different perception on things. Girls are more focused on looks and guys are more focused on sexuality, I would say, kind of. I am making some broad assumptions here, and this is just my opinion and how I kind of look at things. And it's like everything I say, there's no wrong way to do it, and your thoughts on the process are not wrong either. But when you're describing things, I think that's kind of more the way to look at it. And, you know, I'm not saying guys only think about sex, I'm just saying that their descriptors and stuff like that are probably going to take on a little bit more of a nature like that, not a sexual nature. That doesn't sound right, but, you know, it's kind of like the difference of being called hot and being called beautiful. You know, a guy would use hot and a girl would use beautiful in many cases. That kind of difference. Hopefully that line there makes sense. But the attention to detail, and they can be a little harsher. But I don't know, it's hard, and I think it's one of those things that the more you do it, the better you get at it. I'm not going to talk about much more of this, because I'm feeling like this video is not very informative. But the more you do it, the better you get at it, and I really think that the best thing you can do is to watch other people and kind of just keep it, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I think that watching guys in real life is more beneficial than reading anything about it. And then, you know, like I said, reading books from other male authors. I think that's the best way to look at it. And then the other thing is to read books that are done well in guys' perspectives, written by women. The best series I can think of where I feel like someone really nailed it is Cinda Williams Chima. She wrote The Warrior Heir and The Wizard Heir and The Dragon Heir, and she also has The Demon King Chronicles. And The Warrior Heir, that entire series of books is male point of view. It's all told by guys. And then in The Demon King, she does multiple points of view, and many of them are men. And I feel like she nails it, and she just really has this male perspective down pat. And especially in The Demon King, where she has boys and girls, and not all of them are romantically involved, at least not at first, you know, you really can tell the different points of view. And I think a lot of it is just making sure that your male character has a very definite voice, you know, and you need to give them more of a style as far as their voice and development than you would a female character. And that kind of helps them stand out, and it gets you, like, into this character. You know, when you're writing from a character's point of view, you have to get into them. You have to live their life. So you need to be a boy for a little while. you need to do a character study, and you need to kind of watch all around you. I think many writers would actually make great actors and actresses because we're used to being so many different people. You know, a lot of writers, you notice the trend, they tend to be the jack of all trades and master of none. You read about them and they've just had so many different jobs, or they went to college and they have like several different degrees, and it's because writers, if you're a good one, you kind of hunger for this knowledge and for different types of life because you want to experience all different kinds, so you can put a little bit of that into your characters. You know, readers live different lives through what they're reading, whereas the writer has to live that life for themselves for a little while to see what it was like so their character can do it. So you have to live like a boy for a little while, or hang out with a lot of guys. Hanging out with a lot of guys is going to really help your perspective as far as writing from the male. So, you know, it's kind of, there's no wrong way, and I think it's a thing that practice makes perfect. But those are some things that come to mind for me trying to get into the male perspective. I don't work with a lot of guys, but I'm watching a lot of them. You know, writers are watchers as well. So, you know, it really comes down to people watching and practicing and making sure that you have that distinct voice for your character. I hope this was informative and that you took at least something away from it, because I feel like perhaps you did not. But anyway, again, thumbs up if you like the video, and please, if you have any writing questions or something or an idea for a video, let me know and I will be happy to make one about it.